Have you ever had a fear that's so deep it feels like it's a part of you? A fear that kind of dictates what you can and can't do, where you can and can't go. Well, today we're diving into an incredible true story about exactly that. It's about a childhood trauma that nearly ended a life, and the long, tough journey to reclaim it. This is the story of William Douglas and his battle with deep water. The curtain of life fell. Just let that sink in. That one sentence holds the entire weight of this experience. It's how Douglas described the moment he actually lost consciousness while drowning in a pool. It's such a chillingly calm way to describe a moment of just absolute terror. And to really get how he got there, we've got to go back to the beginning. So our story starts with the author himself, William Douglas, when he's just a 10 or 11-year-old kid. He decided it was finally time to learn to swim, so he heads to the local YMCA pool. It seemed safe, way safer than the treacherous Yakima River his mom was always warning him about. But this safe place, it was about to become the scene of a trauma that would haunt him for decades. But see, the pool incident wasn't even the start of his fear. The real seed was planted way earlier. Picture this. You're 3, maybe 4 years old, at a beach in California with your dad. You're hanging on to him, but this huge wave just knocks you down and rolls right over you. You can't breathe. And your father, he just laughs. For a little kid, that feeling, the overpowering force of the water, it created a terror that never really went away. So, fast forward. He's got that childhood aversion already kind of lurking in the back of his mind. He's at the YMCA pool, just starting to get used to the water. He's there all alone, waiting for the other kids. And then this 18-year-old, a big bruiser, as Douglas calls him, strolls in, yells, "Hey, skinny, how'd you like to be ducked?" And just like that, chucks him into the 9-foot deep end. It was this casual, cruel act that almost cost him his life. You know how panic just distorts reality? Well, as he was sinking, those 9 feet felt like an eternity. He was terrified, sure, but his mind was still ticking. He even had a plan. He'd hit the bottom, push off with all his might, and pop up to the surface like a cork. Simple, right? But the water, it had other plans. The trip down was just agonizingly slow, and his lungs felt like they were going to explode. And the plan? It failed. Completely. He came up so slowly, and all he could see was this murky yellow water. His mouth never even broke the surface. He talks about the absolute helplessness of that moment. Just flailing, swallowing water, choking. He was trying to scream, but nothing came out. His legs felt like dead weights, totally paralyzed and useless. This was way more than just being scared. Douglas actually calls it stark terror, a fear so deep that it's beyond reason, beyond any kind of control. It's this primal thing that just grabs you and freezes you solid. The screams in his throat were literally frozen. There was no thinking, just terror. He went down once, twice, and then a third time. And each trip to the bottom was a fresh wave of that stark terror. And then, something strange happened. As he started down that last time, all the effort just stopped. His body went limp. This blackness washed over his brain, and it wiped out the fear. It wiped out the terror. He felt this quiet peace, almost a drowsiness, like he was being carried in his mother's arms. He had crossed into oblivion. He was saved, obviously. The boy who threw him in later said he was only fooling, right? So the physical event was over in a few minutes, but it created this deep psychological handicap that would stick with him for years and years, a haunting fear that followed him absolutely everywhere. And this fear, it had a real tangible cost. I mean, look at this list. These weren't just hobbies. These were the joys of life that were just stolen from him. Every single time he tried to go on a fishing trip or get in a canoe or a boat, that fear would come right back, ruining the entire experience and taking away his freedom to just enjoy the outdoors. And it wasn't just a nagging worry in the back of his head. No, it was physical. It was a possession. He describes how an icy horror would grab my heart. His legs would become paralyzed all over again. The trauma of the pool was literally replaying itself in his body every time he even got near water. So after years of being held captive by this fear, Douglas just made a choice. He was done running from it. He decided he was going to face this terror head on. That October, he went out, found an instructor, and committed to finally, for real, learning how to swim. This was the turning point. But the road to recovery wasn't some quick, dramatic act of bravery. Not at all. It was a slow, patient, and really methodical process. His instructor didn't just teach him how to swim, he basically had to deconstruct the act of swimming and Douglas's fear and then rebuild him from the ground up. The instructor's strategy here was just brilliant. First, he put a belt on Douglas that was attached to an overhead rope. This gave him a safety net, right? So he could be in the water but know for sure that he wouldn't sink. Then it was hundreds of reps of putting his face in the water to exhale and raising it to inhale, just breaking that panic bit by bit. And finally, weeks of just kicking at the side of the pool, teaching his paralyzed legs to actually obey him again. I love this quote because it just captures the whole process perfectly. You see, the fear had shattered him into pieces, and the instructor patiently took each one of those broken pieces, the panic, the breathing, the kicking, and he perfected them one by one before putting them all back together into a complete, confident swimmer. So, come April, the instructor says, "Okay, now you can swim." He was done. But Douglas, he knew he wasn't. The real test was still to come. Could he do it alone? Would that terror-stricken kid reappear the second his safety net was gone? He had to find out. So he started swimming lengths of the pool by himself, and this internal battle started. The old fear would start whispering back, those tiny vestiges of terror. But now he had a new voice. He learned to actually talk back to his fear, to challenge it, even to mock it. He was seizing control of the story in his own head.
But swimming in a pool wasn't enough. He needed to prove he could conquer this fear in deep, open water. So he goes to Lake Wentworth, dives off a dock, and swims 2 miles across to Stamp Act Island. Can you imagine that? In the middle of the lake, he put his face under and saw nothing but bottomless water. The old sensation came back for a second. But this time, he laughed at it and said, "Well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me?" And you know what? The terror fled.
This whole epic journey, it was never just about learning to swim. Through this incredible process of conquering his deepest phobia, Douglas came to a profound understanding of fear itself and its relationship with life and death. This, right here, is the core lesson he learned. Because he had experienced both the terror of drowning and the peaceful oblivion that came after, he understood a deep truth. The actual experience of dying for him was calm. All the absolute horror, that was only in the fear of it. The terror lives in the anticipation, not in the thing itself. And this very personal revelation connected to a much, much bigger stage. See, Douglas was an advisor and a friend to President Roosevelt. His intimate, first-hand knowledge of terror gave him a unique appreciation for what FDR told a nation that was gripped by the fear of economic collapse. For William Douglas, this wasn't just some abstract slogan. It was his lived reality. He had proven to himself the hard way that the paralyzing, life-ruining enemy was never the water. It was the fear of the water. It was fear itself that had held him prisoner for all those years. And with that understanding, he was finally free. Not just free to swim, but free to actually live his life fully. The world opened back up to him, he could walk the trails, he could climb mountains, and when that old whisper of fear ever came back, he now had the strength to just brush it aside. Douglas's story really shows us that freedom from fear isn't necessarily about it being gone forever. Maybe it's about changing our relationship with it. About learning to talk back to it, to challenge it, and to prove, piece by piece, that it doesn't get to have the final say. And it leaves us with a pretty powerful question to think about. What does it mean for you to be truly free from fear?